Welcome, riders. Welcome to the Sword and Ring, a place for all sorts of lore with a special focus on Middle-earth, Hogwarts, Alagaesia, and a galaxy far, far away. I made this channel to start a dialogue on some of my favorite topics. I don't advertise myself as an expert, so please feel free to correct me down in the comments. I would love to get to know your thoughts on these universes. Today, we dive back into the world of Alagaesia and the lives of two of the most influential dragon riders to ever exist. As I mentioned when discussing the rise of Galbatorix, one rider had to be the first to fall to his corruption. One had to be the first to betray his comrades. One had to break first. Unfortunately, not much is known about his early life. He trained as a rider in Illyria and was apprenticed to Ormus and Gladir. His raw talent was evident, but he lacked patience. His name? Morzan. After completing his training, he quickly befriended the other subject of today's video, Brom. Compared to Morzan, Brom's early life is better documented. He was born in the little coastal town of Kuasta, and his parents were illuminators by profession. Kuasta had many strange customs, but Brom ended up abandoning many of these during his training as a rider. When Brom was 10, same age as Galbatorix when his dragon hatched for him, Saphira hatched for Brom. His training in Illyria under Ormus and Gladir brought him into contact with Morzan, and the two became friends. Brom initially idolized the more mature Morzan. Brom was slowly being manipulated by Morzan's cruelty and pride, but Morzan would do something over the top before Ormus ever stepped in to protect Brom. Morzan, who had met Galbatorix and been seduced to his side, betrayed the riders by leaving the gates of Illyria open, allowing Galbatorix to enter and steal Shurikan. For 3 years, Morzan trained and was corrupted by Galbatorix. Meanwhile, Brom and Saphira lived a mostly normal life for a dragon and rider. Then, news started to spread about the disappearance of various dragons and riders. Morzan and Galbatorix were busy. They recruited another 12 riders who, with Morzan, would become known as the Forsworn. Brom and Saphira left Illyria with Ormus and Gladir after the latter were injured in an ambush and needed to heal in Elsmira. The young rider and dragon were counseled by Ormus and Gladir not to join the confrontation against Galbatorix and the Forsworn. However, the two were unconvinced and left to aid the other riders at Doru Arabe. This was the ultimate battle between the riders and Forsworn. In it, many riders and dragons fell, including Saphira. Brom also lost his sword, Unbitter, and returned to Elsmira. However, instead of allowing his grief to consume him, Brom marched with the elves and aided in the defense of Illyria. Ultimately, the city fell and Brom was faced with a choice: to retreat and recuperate and learn how to live without Saphira, or to follow the darker path of vengeance and retribution. At the fall of the riders and the dragons cast powerful magic to strip the Forsworn's dragons of their names and therefore their identities. This spell is why we do not know the name of Morzan's dragon. Unlike many of his fellow Forsworn, Morzan did not fall into madness, but was granted a position in Galbatorix's court and a castle near the Spine. He became a menace across the country, known to be a fearsome warrior and great spellcaster. He and his dragon were some of Galbatorix's greatest tools. It was through this campaign of terror that Morzan met a woman in Carvajal named Selena. Meanwhile, Brom, who had been searching across the country for any Eldunari that may have escaped Galbatorix's search, began to organize a resistance. He helped found the Varden and convinced both elves and dwarves to aid them, going so far as to gain King Hrothgar's approval to base the Varden in Farthendur. After getting the Varden operational, Brom left to continue his campaign of revenge and was ultimately responsible for 8 of the Forsworn's deaths. Alright, I'm going to end this one here. Next time, we'll continue with part 2 of this topic, and I'll go ahead and warn everyone that it will be full of spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled, read the books before coming back for part 2. But thank you for listening. Let me know down in the comments who else you want to get a refresher on before the events of Eragon. If you missed the beginning of this journey, there's a card on your screen to see the history of Galbatorix. Anyway, I'll be with you next time on the Sword and Ring.